Hello my friends, on your screens you may see the definition of insanity, where Russian army continued to perform midwave attacks in Pokrovsk direction in attempt to get the new result, but for the third day in consecutive they have just losses. Yes, they stormed the Ukrainian positions with motorcycle attacks, but the problem here that they haven't reached the Ukrainian positions, they were all kaputted on the way. Most of the Russian advancements are happening in the southern area. They try to cross the railroad to go forward to the north. But so far Ukraine keeps this area in a gray zone, and you can see how Ukrainian controlled territory in Mirnograd itself shrinks a little. It means that probably, I cannot state it by 100%, but Ukraine withdraws the forces from Mirnograd. I do not see another variant, and Russians cannot firmly close this gap, this bottleneck for Ukrainian army. Still, yes, there is the presence of them not far away from Rivne, and they put their flag here before, but Rivne is still in a gray zone, so there could be the presence of the Russian forces as well as somewhere in this place, but Ukraine still has the variant to withdraw most of the forces from Mirnograd, even though with losses. In this video we're going to discuss with you situation on the front lines, kabooms happening in Russia and on occupied territory, especially Crimea, plus different political stuff and other news around Ukraine, because they are also important. Let's go. And let's continue with the situation in Pokrovsk. I have the new video information coming about the presence of the Ukrainian armed forces not far away from Rivne. Well, not just the Ukrainian regular army troops were spotted there, but also GUR special forces. They're very capable. They're the part of the military intelligence of Ukraine. Budanov is the chief of that one. As you might remember, before they landed somewhere over here on Black Hawk helicopters, and since that time Ukraine expanded its territorial control over this bottleneck, and now there is one more operation to expand it more, to let Ukrainian forces out from almost fully occupied Mirnograd, so the presence here is being confirmed. By the way, the fun is just beginning. The comment of Ukrainian service member of the military intelligence of Ukraine. We have even the GoPro image. Yeah, our guys went there by feet through the forest line. They stormed some of the local buildings, houses. But Ukrainian military intelligence also uses its own drones to search for Russians even inside the buildings. And the update from the deep state military map shows that the controlled territory of Ukraine in Mirnograd is shrinking. Again, it could be because Ukraine withdraws the forces. Alright, now let's go to Kupiansk. We have the confirmation of the Ukrainian army presence not far away from Hulaypole. The supply lines completely cut for Russians. They are now jammed between Oskil River and Ukrainian positions, with few hundred of the Russian forces encircled in Kupiansk. This is a big deal. Even though Russia loses hundreds of the troops per day in Ukrainian front lines, but still hundreds of them being encircled, it is important for multiple of the reasons, because it might create, first of all, the picture. Yes, if they all surrender to Ukrainian army, imagine just hundreds of Russians imprisoned by Ukraine, and they, by the way, started to surrender. Later on, I'm going to show you some of the images. So it will destroy the Russian propaganda about occupation of Kupiansk. Just, well, now it's been already destroyed with Zelensky's visit not far away from Kupiansk. Actually, he was on territory of the settlement, geographically. But some of the pro-Russian speakers still deny the full encirclement and cut of those supplies, saying that deep state military map is not correct. But let me show you some of the images. As it has been reported, the main supply line for Russians, which was this tube, was cut completely. Russians were actually capable to send a significant amount of the forces there using the tube, but Ukraine mounted some of the TNT there, around 3 tons, putting the tube in multiple of the places, so it's no go any longer, so Russia cannot send any more supplies. It was the only reliable line for them to go underneath the ground, not being hit by Ukrainian drones, but now it's not working. Geolocated confirmed this is the place not far away from Hulaypole, and the presence of the Ukrainian army is everywhere, also in the northern outskirts. So Russians completely encircled, trapped. You may call it different name. They have a couple of the enclaves, one in the central part of the settlement and the other one in the northern part. Also, there could be some presence of the separate small groups of the Russian army, but Ukraine now clears the city. It might take some extensive period of time, even several months, because Russia has some of the spots to hide, buildings, basements. It's not an easy job, but Ukraine continued to do it. Yeah, sometimes Ukraine even has to cancel the entire buildings with aviation gliding bombs to demolish Russian positions. Sadly, but yeah, this city is no go any longer. It's ruined almost fully. Also, every basement is being targeted by Ukrainian drones if Russians are spotted. And our guys from 475th Separate Assault Regiment already confirmed the full encirclement. We have some action camera videos from our guys operating in Kupiansk. And Russians surrender. Some of them are very young. As you know, Russia is forcing them to sign contracts. I mean, there is the conscription service in Russia where they mobilize the guys who are even 18 years old. And after their compulsory service term is over, Russia pushes them to sign the contract with the Russian army. And that contract has no end date, and they're being sent to the front lines. Also, foreigners were imprisoned by Ukrainian army, so it's the mix of the forces. This is funny. Who imprisoned you? Ninja Turtles. Yeah, Ukraine actually takes lots of the Russian prisoners of war in Kupiansk, in Pokrovsk. They surrender. Yeah, the demotivation in the Russian army is very, very high because of their attitude within their army. It's crazy. The Russian commanders send their army men one way, and if they refuse to fight, commanders punish them with the help of another soldiers who do this punishment job. That's why in most of the cases they're quite happy to surrender to Ukrainian side. But some of them are brainwashed and continue to fight till the very last end. Yeah, so lots of the videos from the front line, and there are different cases of how Russians may surrender, may not surrender, because Russian commanders and Russian army, they tell their soldiers that you'll be tortured in Ukrainian army. It's better to fight, and in the worst case scenario, kaput yourself with grenade or something. So yeah, that's how they tell. Looks like Wagner army is also deployed in Kupiansk, but Wagner army is not that strong as it was before under Prigozhin. Now it's like a puppet army group of the Russian army. All of the heritage, so-called, of Wagner's evaporated. You know, guys, there is so much disinformation, it's kind of easy to believe to, but it's better to cross-check. Like, for example, people, some of the influencers or who else there, they start to say that Colonel General Sergei Kuzovlev, who was the commander of the Kupiansk front of the Russian army and recently received the Medal of Hero of Russia from Putin himself for taking Kupiansk, he was flatlined by Russia, has officially been declared dead. No, it's fake information, at least for now. It's logical, yes, for him to be to have those kind of the circumstances usual for Russians, yeah. But for now, it's not confirmed information. It hasn't happened, yeah. So it's fake. There is no evidence of it. Nothing, absolutely, just those images. But I'm sure that he will be punished, maybe even in this way, because it was pure humiliation of Putin. So Putin need to harm someone, yeah. But you know, it will not change the Russian system because it was built like that by Putin. It's built on lies, pure propaganda, misinformation, as I told you before, at every sort of the level. From the very low-rank commanders to the top generals, they all lie, over-exaggerating their advancements and territorial gains and successes until Putin gets the information that, oh, Russia is winning elsewhere. Then in fact it's not like that, and Russia just did the flag operation in Kupiansk with hundreds of the soldiers, but now they're trapped, and yeah, that's the reality. Zelensky showed the reality. But the main job is of course done by Ukrainian army, Ukrainian soldiers. They are the heroes, real, true heroes. Well, there are some of the points of the front line where Russia is successful. For example, in Siversk, they almost fully occupied the settlement. It is partially in a gray zone. Yeah, half of the city has been occupied, half in a gray, but the presence of the Russian army is elsewhere. They advanced already with the main forces. Ukraine tries to stop the Russian offensive, but here they propelled quite fast for the last week. Yeah, that's the new direction they attack. The idea of Russia is to go from Siversk to Slavyansk. I expect the fights for Slavian settlement to occur maybe even next year, because the defense lines here, they're not that robust. The next one is pretty much near the city, but the terrain here is kind of difficult, so it might take Russia a few months to get to Slavyansk itself. Well, it all depends how it might go. I expect that they will propel slowly. After all, after Siversk, as it was, for example, with tourist direction, Russia moves very, very slowly here. Reaching Konstantinivka, yes, but for them it's very, very hard here. In Zaporizhia, they're moving faster, but Donbass is more defended, way more than Zaporizhia Oblast. In Hulaypole, Russia is also successful. You may see they're taking more ground. There was the gap, like for 3-4 days, they were standstill, but now they send a small groups of infantry and put their flags towards Zelena, and behind it there is the main Ukrainian defense line for this sector. Also, Russian aviation continued to use lots of the gliding aviation bombs in Hulaypole, forcing Ukrainian troops to leave the settlement completely. That's their strategy. They ruin everything, and only that is how they may propel. And if you check out Deep State, this is Siversk, where Russia moved. For the last couple of days, maybe a week, yeah, you see Russia moved quite substantially here. So eventually there is a variant for Russian army to take the entire Donbass in the next couple of years. Maybe it's going to be like that. But Russia will have to waste significant resources for that. And their economy, it will struggle. And that's why they want for Ukraine just to leave this area, for Russia to occupy the region and continue the movement towards Dnipro, towards Kharkiv. Why Putin is so happy about Kupiansk? Kupiansk is the Kharkiv Oblast. Russia hasn't put this one into its constitution, but Putin proclaims some fake victories for his army. He should have withdrawn the forces from this place. So it means that the goal of Russia is not just those 4 or 5 oblasts of Ukraine. Russia wants more. Kharkiv as well, Dnipropetrovsk. They want to create so-called Novorossiya connected to Russia, and for the rest of Ukraine behind Dnipro River, or maybe even less over here, to be pro-Russian puppet state. That's it. And here I want to show you the revenge of the Russian army in Kupiansk. You see this road with those anti-drone nets. Russia bombed the hell out of this place. I guess it's kind of familiar for you, yeah? This is the stele of Kupiansk. Russia uses the FPV drone to hit the name of the settlement of Kupiansk. They couldn't reach Zelensky personally, but they started to hit the place where he was staying. I think it's some sort of the cult. Like, they're so obsessed with Zelensky that they even hit the places where he has been. Some of the vehicles were hit, supply vehicles before. And this is the Stella, yeah, partially destroyed. And all of those anti-drone nets. Russia continued to use some thermite drones to hit those nets as well. So just imagine the number of the drones. Yeah, one of the drones just stuck here. It's the fiber optic control drone with kind of the large coil. Maybe it may fly by 20 kilometers long. So Russia is using its resources not to fight on the front lines, but to hit the places where Zelensky was. Okay. This video was filmed by our volunteers. It shows that the spot is under Ukrainian control and that definitely Zelensky was risking his life being at the spot. Yeah, he could be easily targeted by multiple of the Russian drones, but it is important. Like, that visit was definitely meaningful for improving Ukrainian morale and for showing to everyone that Putin just lies about the territorial gains. Kupiansk, we took Kupiansk. No. You see here in the picture, the sign was not that significantly damaged as I showed you on the previous video. Alright, to some other news, we have this epic image or video, slow motion, of the crash of Antonov 22, the Russian cargo transport airplane, yes, of the Russian airspace forces. This airplane was damn old, and as you see, the empennage just separated away, probably because of the poor maintenance of the airplane. They didn't see the metal fatigue coming. It's like Titanic, yeah, collapsed into two of the parts. One more video from another spot. It's not AI, guys. It's the CCTV cam. Yeah, all of the crew members are perished. They went to the lake, and Russia still tries to find them, but it's evident that it's no go. There was no fire because of the war, and big kaboom kaput, you may call it. The situation in the Russian army, by the way, Russian officials, they stated in 2024 that those airplanes were written off, but somehow they continue to operate. Yeah, I think on every sort of the Antonov airplanes that Russia continued to use, including Ruslan Antonov 1 to 4, it's impossible to perform the proper maintenance because the main facility and factories are located in Ukraine. And Ukraine is not supplying spare parts for the engines, other components, and there are simply not enough specialists in Russia to conduct the proper maintenance. So how they fly, maybe those cases will be more happens in Russia, right? Kaboom news. This is the occupied Crimea. Some of the oil base is burning. Well, it's not the only spot that was visited by Ukrainian drones the last night. There were multiple of the locations, including Feodosia, East Coast, West Coast, some of the Russian bases, some of the industrial complexes. We don't have lots of the videos coming because of the censorship in Russia, but some of the information is still going to the local Telegram channels and being published also by our channels, transferred. Also, Ukraine hit some of the trains in Crimea. Yantarne village, FP2 drones were working. This is a very powerful drone capable to carry more than 100 kilograms of TNT. Probably it's the fuel train that was hit, at least it's burning very, very bright. Also the fuel or oil storage. Bitumne oil base, the one you saw already in the previous video. Also, some sort of the base in the Donetsk region was hit, the place where probably Russians were hiding. It's the training ground of the Russian FPV drone operators. Awesome. Also in Russia itself, there were several of the kabooms. As usual, this is Kupiansk, Russian oil base. Tulska Oblast, Russia, some of the kabooms. Yeah, definitely, Christmas is coming. Wow, beautiful. That's the hydroelectric station in Smolensk Oblast, by the way, not far away from Moscow. Shines bright like a diamond. Drones were flying to hit the Fimsky oil refinery Krasnodarsky Krai. There is the crater, he says. Well, some of the drones were hit on the way and went to the local residential households. Eh? That's the standard Russian toilet. Okay. I wonder if the cameraman was in the toilet by the time of the kaboom. Maybe it saved him. And yes, the Trump color sky over Afimsky refinery. So some of the drones made it to the target. Some of them were shot down by the Russian air defense. As usual. Penza, Russia, something went wrong with the train. Oh, it's nasty there. Lots of the oil or maybe diesel fuel. It didn't ignite. Otherwise, it could be a little bit warm for locals. Looks like something went wrong with the train. And this is Ukraine already. Yakovlev 52 shuts down the Russian Shahid drone. War Thunder, yeah? Shahid is screaming, engine is still working, but boom, nice. Yakovlevs could be effective, yeah, they shut down lots of the drones. Interesting. The last night Russia also attacked Odessa infrastructure, Sumy, and some of the regions of Donbass. As usual, every night there are exchanges of the strikes from Ukraine, from Russia, but Ukraine aims just for Russian important logistic facilities, infrastructure, which is used to supply Russian army or support Russian economy. No civilian buildings are the targets for Ukraine. But Russia, as we know, they precisely hit sometimes Ukrainian multi-story residential buildings. That's the video we have from that ferry that was transporting, as you can see, trucks full of freaking tomatoes. Those are not grenades, Russians. Those are tomatoes. That's the ship they hit. Russia already said that the ship was transporting military equipment for Ukraine. Well, it seems like Ukrainian soldiers may just throw tomatoes at Russians and it will be enough for Russians to kaput, looks like, according to the Russian propaganda. Yeah, that's what Russia is fighting against. They call it a response, but initially Russia targeted the LNG tanker, also in one of the Ukrainian ports. It was 1 month ago, and well before they hit lots of the Ukrainian port infrastructure. So Ukraine decided, okay, you do this stuff, we're gonna sink down your tankers in the Black Sea. And Russia now tells, oh, it's our response on those vessels supplying this military equipment to Ukraine. They're stupid. All right, couple of the words about the peace talks or peace deal. Zelensky has arrived to Germany, Berlin. There will be the meeting between European representatives, Ukrainian president, and Kushner plus Witkov, those partners of Trump, Putin, whatsoever. And Ukraine is just an obstacle. For them, it would be a perfect scenario if Russia occupies Ukraine once and for all to make the deal with Russia. But it doesn't work like that. And Ukraine still has the support from our allies. Zelensky said himself personally that we will not agree on giving Russia Ukrainian territories, and Russia will never accept another deal because they just want to take new territories, more territories. That's their goal. If it is happening because of the peace deal, so-called, yeah, so let it be. We'll not use our mighty army resources and take Donbass as it is. For Putin, this variant is awesome because he might take Donbass without using military, but yeah, it's understandable that this deal will not go. And with the speech of Chancellor Merz yesterday, I'm sure that Europeans will support Ukraine, because here, in this particular topic, he says the things as they are. Dear friends, the decades of Pax America are largely over for us in Europe and for us in Germany as well. It no longer exists as we knew it. So the previous world order is being ruined by Donald Trump and Russia. That's the way it is. The Americans are now very, very aggressively pushing their own interests. And that can only mean one thing, that we too must now pursue our own interests. And dear friends, we are not so weak after all. We are not so small after all. Yes, European economy is still big, lots of the population, industry complexes, but Europe did some very stupid stuff, for example, with its nuclear power. As I see it, the decision to cancel this type of energy in Germany was not that great. For many of the factors, maybe I'm gonna tell it in separate video on my another channel. By the way, guys, I have another channel. Yes, it's called Captain Dennis, and every day I post videos there about random stuff and also a stream. So please check it out in the video description. Follow me there for more communication, maybe. It's a YouTube channel, it's not a Telegram, where we may discuss even the topic about European energy, maybe. So this American interest, yeah, it's now also a Russian interest, because they want to make some sort of the deal. I mean, Trump and Putin, they want to earn money and they want Europe to pay for everything. There is now the deal even about the Russian frozen assets that could be potentially used by Americans for reconstruction of the Russian economy. What? It is a war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine, against Europe, and if Ukraine falls, it won't end, so will not end. Just as the Sudetenland wasn't enough in 1938, Putin doesn't stop, and everyone who still believes he had enough, should carefully analyze his strategies, documents, speeches, and public appearances. That's what I tell on my channel exactly. You need to just listen what Putin says. He wants this war to continue. He declares it each time. He says nothing about peace. He says about the deal with America that pursue the interest of the special military operation. All of his officials, including himself, Putin, they say that they're gonna reach the goal of SMO, doesn't matter in diplomatic way or in military. That's how they say. But Vitkov, Trump, they are blind, or they want to be blind, it's better to say. They want to have this deal with Russia. They don't care about Europe. They don't care about Ukraine after all. Another problem for Europe that still it doesn't have that strong military production as, for example, the United States of America. It doesn't have the common army, common coordination, logistics, and the really decisive mechanism to use its military forces against the possible aggression. Under all of the previous presidents of the United States of America, there were reassurances for Europe that, okay, we're going to protect you. We are NATO alliance, everything is great. But then this orange buffoon came in power. He destroyed all of that. Previous order, as Mert says, is gone. And Europe simply doesn't have enough time to boost its military. There is the window now for Putin to act in Europe as well. That's why I think that there is the great possibility for the war to erupt somewhere in Baltic states. I think it's going to be maybe in parallel with the Ukrainian war. So Ukraine is very important now for Europe. First of all, it holds the Russian aggression, and secondary, it's the biggest army on the continent from the Western side, from the Western democracies, and also capable army. Still, yeah, you saw the operation in Kupiansk, multiple of the counteroffensives, like it happened also in Dobropilya. All of that with a limited military support. But the issue here that Ukrainian army cannot fight forever. There is a resource limit. After all, it's the full-scale war. So Europe should finally wake up and invest a lot into its military production and also make reforms. So not just the Ukrainian army is struggling without reforms, but also Europe should come out with European analog of NATO or European part of NATO, something like that. Common army, common strategy. Otherwise, it's no go. But I'm not too much optimistic, because how can Europe be united with those stupid idiots in power? Also bureaucrats. It's not just about Orban, who says that confiscation of the Russian assets is the declaration of war against Russia. He's a Russian freaking puppet. But also the countries as Italy, Malta, Belgium, they're against the confiscation of those money which could be spent to boost European military. Partially send the weapons to Ukraine, partially improve your own army. No, they're still blind. They're just obsessed with those money. They do not understand the real threat coming. It's not about money after all. You'll have to confiscate Russian assets in the future in any case, but the problem here that you may support the Ukrainian army fighting already, or you will just confiscate those assets in the future to support your own armies of Europe to fight against Russia on European territory. NATO territory. Sometimes I get the comments that Ukraine is also part of Europe. Yes, of course, I know. We just call Europe and Ukraine like in separate terms here. European Union, And the idea of Putin is to conquer Ukraine and to use Ukrainians in further wars against Europeans. This scenario I continue to tell about on my channel. It's not that unrealistic, because after all, Russia has more resources than Ukraine, so Ukraine requires military support, and without confiscation of the Russian money, it's going to be very difficult for Europe to continue the support of Ukraine. So Ukraine, in the future perspective, may lose Kupiansk, after all, together with multiple of the settlements, and who knows what might happen next. It's unpredictable. Well, still, I think that Ukraine will be victorious, but we need more support for that. Without it, it's going to be very hard for Ukraine to repel Russian aggressive attacks. And the idea for Ukraine is just to resist until Russian regime collapses itself with its military use, with its failing economy. It will happen, but not very soon. One more problem in Europe, that there are the forces that destroy it from within, far right and far left. For example, this is far left force with Greta Thunberg in charge.
L'alternativa che il capitale ci propone è la produzione di armi.
So here they are against the production of the weapons in Europe. Europe should be peaceful like this rainbow unicorn or something like that. But, there are wolves around. Wolf across the ocean, the United States of America, that wants to kaput European Union and Europe itself, to disperse it to the different states, far right mostly, would be easy to control. Or let's say so-called far right, because in Hungary it's just kleptocrat dictatorship, for example. And wolves from the Russian side, the most aggressive, maybe you might call it a bear. That bear is bleeding, it is crazy, it has rabies, it is willing to attack anyone around. But no, unicorn should be pink and fluffy. Yeah, we are far lefties. What is this? A new type of the swastika? For me, far left, far right are the same, especially if we speak about the foreign policy. I hate Nazis, I hate communists, and what I see here are the communists. So their policy and the policy of, let's say, Orban is the same. We should not arm our countries, we should not defend ourselves. That's what they say. And you know what? Russia supports both of the sides. It was uncovered multiple of the times that far left and far right, they receive money from Russia. Yeah, two biggest problem for Europe, lack of unity and lots of the chauvinist populist parties, which could win in elections, block of the military support for Ukraine, block all of the military initiatives within Europe, and that will lead to the big war, so prepare for that. There are some of the tweet wars between Siarto and Radislav Sikorsky. Here's what Hungarian dictators saying. We understand you really want a Russia with Europe war. We will not let ourselves be dragged into your war. Sikorsky says, unless Russia invades again, there won't be such a war. But we understand that this time you would be on her side. Yeah, Hungary took the wrong sides multiple of the times, actually, as it takes right now, yeah? So hopefully with the next elections we will forget the surname Orban. Alright, we have the reaction from Ushakov, who is a main advisor of Putin on negotiations happening in Berlin. Actually, this video was recorded 2 days ago. And it really shows that they don't give about those negotiations. They say that they will not accept changes to the plan done by European partners and Ukraine. It's no go for Russia, yeah? You may communicate, you may blah blah blah, but Russia will not accept it. And even in American media, there was the information that Witkoff and Kushner, they're not sure yet that Russia may accept that deal or not, with changes, without changes. Oh, they're idiots, incompetent buffoons. Also, Ushakov mentioned the Korean scenario. No one speaks about Korean scenario, he said. Even though in media we got the information that Americans are looking for maybe even Korean scenario, but Korean scenario in Ukraine is not possible. In Korea it worked because there was the Great Army, the United States of America, and real guarantees for South Korea. Simply they signed the agreement and it's actually the ceasefire. That's what Zelensky says. We need ceasefire. Stay on the current front line, not moving. But Russia, they want to occupy more territories. They want entire Donbass, create, as they call, the buffer area. But the buffer area will be taken by Russia pretty much easily. And also the physical factor of the ground. The front lines in Ukraine are way longer than in Korean Peninsula. So how can someone control what is happening? No, it's not possible, especially with the current Russian regime, no. So unfortunately, guys, this war will continue, may continue for years and years ahead. Sadly, yeah, based on what is happening, it is the most possible scenario. But nevertheless, Russia will not win it. Absolutely. And guys, thank you for your kind support on Patreon and membership. The link for my Patreon is in the video description right below. As for the membership, you may just press the join button somewhere over here. If not, if you don't have this opportunity or willing to support me in that way, just press like to this video and subscribe for the channel. That's how you propel this video in the YouTube algorithms. Thank you so much for that as well. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.